Glen, Alissa, welcome to the show. We appreciate you joining us for another episode of Lessons from the Front. Glen, I have to tell you, as I look at the two of you, we talk about better half and we talk about, trading up, out kicking our coverage. I don't want you to think that, you're square in the middle of that or anything, but you are. So, no, it really is. It's nice to see you guys, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. You guys have been a big part of Carry the Load, and y'all have been a big part of really kind of how this thing has evolved. And I look forward to getting into the story about the backpack, the name tape, because that really is one of those things that kind of put us on the map. So, again, welcome to Lessons from the Front. And you guys are kind of unique in that you both served, and if I'm not mistaken, Alissa, you were in you saw combat yourself, did you not?
I did. I went to Afghanistan in 2003. So it's been a little while.
That's what I love about folks like you. Oh yeah, I went to Afghanistan in 2003. There aren't a lot of guys that can say that, let alone women. And is that where y'all met?
We met before that.
Yeah, we actually met in the Army prior to all that. 1990, man, we're aging ourselves here. 1988. Yeah, we met a long time ago, and I was the adjutant for my unit, and she came over from her unit, and they were looking for a place for her to go. So she was. I tell these stories because she won't, but she was one of the very first female combat engineers in the United States Army. So after she served her time over there in the 299th Engineer Battalion and a combat mechanized unit, she came over to our unit, and we were a construction unit for engineers. So that's how we met.
Okay, well, we can't just leave it there. You need to put the humility aside here, and you tell us what it was like being a woman in a combat world.
It was interesting. We probably all struggled with it. It was the Army of the 21st century, so they were experimenting with all kinds of different things. And I know there was another woman in the first cab at the same time as I was in 4th ID, but I didn't know at the time. I found out later. And I think it was just a real challenge for us all. And they were pretty open about it being different for them. And my first platoon sergeant was really hard, but really good too. He taught me a lot, and we fought a lot. And our first sergeant used to joke we had a love-hate relationship. He was like, I don't really know which it is. And I was like, I don't know either. He's kind of great, but it was hard.
So stay there for a minute. For people who aren't real familiar with the military, so you were a platoon commander, correct?
I got to be support platoon. So at the time, they didn't allow women to be line platoon leaders. So they put me in the headquarters company. And so I was a support platoon leader, which was a challenge because it's a first lieutenant job. And I would have been a line platoon leader first and then moved over into support platoon. But they couldn't do that because that's not how they did it. So they put me right in the support platoon.
So as an officer, though, you talked about your platoon sergeant being that he was very hard. Mm-hmm. Explain the relationship there for everybody. Officer, enlisted, platoon leader, platoon sergeant. I mean, you outranked him. So explain to people how that works when you say that he was hard on you, because his job is not to just do your every wish.
No. Not at all. No.
So tell people about that.
According to him, it was his platoon. And I was there to learn from him.
I'll ask you this though, Alissa. How in the world did you end up in the military? It is a world that is very much it's a man's world. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You are here you are a female in this very man's world, and you end up in combat, which is a very masculine, quote unquote, world. How did you find your way into the military?
I really never thought I'd do anything different. My grandfather served in the Army. He came from Ireland when he was 2, and he worked for his citizenship, and he felt like he needed to serve. And all but 3 of his kids served in the military. 1 was in the Navy. The rest were all in the Air Force. And my mother served in the Air Force. My aunt was a huge role model for me. She served in the Air Force. And she and my mother broke barriers. And we always knew. We heard the stories. And my dad served in the Air Force. He had volunteered to go to Vietnam. And service was just really important. And so I didn't think I'd do anything different. And the reason I chose the Army is because I thought it'd be really exciting. All my family that was in the Air Force thought I was nuts. And
little did you know
it's going to be more fun in the Army.
Little did you know that excitement has many different definitions and they're not all positive. So, okay. So,
yeah, and when I called,
no, go ahead, please finish.
Oh, I had traded. I was stationed in Korea, and then I had called and I switched with someone at OVC, and I called to find out my job, and she said, "You're going to be the first woman in the 299th." And I said, "Oh no, you picked the wrong girl." And she said, "No, we don't get a choice. You're going to go and you're going to do this job." I was like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yep." I was like, "Okay,
wow.
I'm going to do that." So
the 299th, again, being the combat support unit, I believe, is what the 299th was. Is that correct?
Mechanized engineer battalion, and then I was in the support platoon. So I was in the headquarters company in the support platoon.
Okay, so I'm gonna park that, and we're gonna come back to that because sitting to your right is your lower half, and that would be Glenn. So Glenn, you too have a multi-generational family background, do you not?
I do. So 4 generations. My great-grandfather was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Navy. Never served on a ship, though. That was kind of a funny thing. My father was in the Army, and hence I was in the Army as well. So it's just something that I thought that's what we were supposed to do.
So you both talk like it was kind of a foregone conclusion. You have kids. Is it a foregone conclusion for them?
No, I think it's too important of a job to do it if you don't want to. So I think you need to really want to. I think it's something that you have to pick and you have to want.
Yeah.
And so how, assuming that they want it like y'all wanted it, is that something that you try to turn them away from? How do you deal with that as a parent?
We talk with them about that they have a choice. I smiled because my daughter actually a couple years ago, we were talking about it. We do carry the load every year. And my parents talk a lot about my service because I don't wear the uniform when I go to the march. So I don't think they see it as much. But we were talking about it, and she said, and I said something about choosing being in the military, and she said, "Oh, you get to pick whether you're in the military?" I was like, yes, you get to pick. And that's a choice you make or don't make. And you can still serve even when you're not in. And I really want to emphasize that with them because, you can serve for 4 years in, but there's so much more for the rest of your life. Like there's so much more that you can do.
So, okay. So what's interesting is that, yes, your kids do have the choice. It's funny that they didn't even realize that they have a choice. A lot of countries, people don't. So what is it about Carry the Load that has been very impactful to you and your family in that regard, teaching them about the fact that we do have a choice here? So
one great thing I liked about Carry the Load is the families are there. And again, the first year I did it was pretty much by myself. Alissa was pregnant. It was very difficult to bring her out, so I kind of did it myself. But you did. You came out and walked all pregnant, fat.
I was like 9 months pregnant, and they were very, very nice to me.
Well,
they let me park right next to him.
For those of us who have been around a pregnant wife, we know, be very kind to those ladies.
But I think the Carry the Load, the whole program and the whole organization, I think because the families are there, it starts off it starts the kids off right, so to speak. You know, I grew up, Memorial Day was just, hey, that was the start of summer. You know, I grew up in Michigan. It was when the pools all opened up, time to go to the lake. I understood what it meant just because my father was in the military and our background, but having our kids there to see, you know, why we honor those who have fallen in combat and the importance, because, you know, we have our freedoms because of those individuals. And I think that's one of the most impactful part of Carry the Load.
And so, Alissa, for you, how did you, when you were growing up, I mean, obviously your family, you talked about the fact that your grandfather immigrated from Ireland. Was Memorial Day, did you understand Memorial Day growing up, or were you same thing? We've just done a poor job of it as a country.
Yeah,
What's that?
I'm not even sure I understood it when I was in the Army. Like when I was in the Army, it was an extra day to work when nobody was around. So it was a 3-day weekend and I would go to work. And I don't think I really understood the full impact of it. When I was in the Army, it was a peacetime Army. So I think that made a difference for how we looked at it. When I went to Afghanistan, it was after I served active duty and I got called back. And then I was a civilian. So I don't think I really understood it until I got to go to Carry the Load and read the boards and talk to families and talk to other people about their experiences. And I think that really made a big difference for me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think you articulated that very well, Alissa. I mean, it was, I don't think I understood it to the same degree either when I was in. Because, you know, like you, although I was in during both Gulfs, it was, you know, it was for the most part peacetime when I served. And yeah, I mean, I think as America, as the country, we've done a poor job of what Carry the Load, I think, has done a very good job of. And that's, you know, making sure that people understand our job, you know, at Carry the Load is to educate people to those sacrifices. If we didn't even understand it in the military, how can we understand Joe civilian to understand it? So you bring up a really, really good point. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the family history of the military, because y'all have a deep family history. So Alissa, coming back to you real quick. You made mention on a previous call about your father, who, if I understood it correctly, was not in actual combat, but saw the effects of combat in a way that very few of us understand.
He was an OR technician, and he was pretty open with his stories. And he struggled a lot with PTSD, which meant my family struggled. And he would go to the meetings, and I would see, he had friends that were amputees, and he would tell me ahead of time, we're going to go see my friend, and when you see me shake his hand, it's going to be a different way, and this is what happened to him, and this is how that happened. He was very open with me about the things that he saw age appropriately. Like as I got older, he shared more about the effect of war and the importance of service. That was really, really important to him. So.
And Glenn, your dad was in Vietnam.
He was not actually in Vietnam. He actually signed up to go to Vietnam, and they actually sent him to Korea, hence where my brother and I were born at. He stayed there for 4 years, actually.
So if you're born in Korea, you automatically look like you have a Korean. I mean, help me understand. No, I'm just kidding. That's kind of funny, actually, when you stop and think about it. There's some jokes in there. There's some good humor in there. But so anyway, please continue.
No, so he dropped out of high school, and he was going to join the military, and he was going to go fight in Vietnam, and they ended up sending him to Korea. He had met my biological mother and ended up staying there, and he stayed there for 4 years, which most folks in the military, when I tell them that my father stayed in Korea for 4 years, that's unheard of. That's normally, it's a hardship tour. You do a 1-year tour and you leave. But he stayed there for 4 years and then came back to the States. So very interesting.
So tell me about that, growing up in in an environment, in a household in the United States where you're of Asian descent. I'm assuming by the way you said that your father is white. Was that a hardship at all for you? Was there ever any challenge to that? Because kids can be cruel.
Yeah, I would say so. And it was a challenge, So I came to the United States when I was 3 years old, almost 4. English was my second language. I didn't know any English at all whatsoever. And my father wanted me to learn English pretty quick. So I learned English by watching TV, and I learned a lot of it. It was pretty funny because my father ended up getting out of the military, and we moved back to his hometown, which is Detroit, Michigan. And growing up in Detroit, Michigan as 2 Asian kids, my brother and I, speaking not much English at all whatsoever, it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge. And then not even meeting anyone else who was Asian until I was in 6th grade. I had never met another Asian person until I was in 6th grade.
Is that right?
So it was different. Yeah, the very first person, Angie, Missouri. I still remember her name. So.
Wow.
And she was Filipino. So.
Okay, well that qualifies. So tell me, how did you get involved in Carry the Load?
I tell this story a lot, and it's important because I was a factory manager for in my work, and one of my supervisors that worked for me, his name was Lance. He was a Marine, and he told me about this thing in 2011. He's like, "Hey, you got this thing called Carry the Load," and I didn't understand what it was. They're gonna walk around White Rock Lake, and they're gonna honoring Memorial Day, and I was like, "Okay, it's interesting." But when I saw the video that Clint and Steven put on, but it was Clint Bailey, it really resonated with me. I had gotten back from Iraq not long after, but not only a few years prior to that. And, we had lost people there as well. And it just connected with me. It's like, hey, I had that. And I think I heard Clint say at one point, is that survivor guilt a little bit. Here I am. And here are these individuals who didn't make it home. And how do we honor them? And it was he talked about emotional cleansing through physical pain. And that I understood. I understood that. So in 2012, when it came back and they moved to Reverchon Park, I said, I need to be involved in that. I really definitely do. And it was definitely a purge of, I lost most of my toenails, I think. It was a slugfest to try to do all that walking, but it felt good. It felt really good because not only the emotional purge, but to be surrounded by a bunch of other individuals who had that same feeling. It's like, hey, look, we forgot. How did we as a nation forget about this? And it's important. And I'm glad for Carry the Load. And ever since then, I've been walking.
So if I heard you correctly, you were introduced to this by a Marine. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that I heard that part correctly. So what a lot of people don't understand, I think, about the event, you're talking about losing your toenails, and there's somebody out there going, God, this Carry the Load sounds great, right up until the point where you said you lost all your toenails, because they don't necessarily understand the event. And it's one of those things where, people, they're like, okay, so wait a minute, we're going to do what? And we're going to do that for how long? The whole night? And so and then you kind of have to back them up and say, wait a minute, it's not, you can come out and you can walk for 1 minute. You can walk for 1 lap. You can walk for all night. The idea is that you are walking alongside of the families of the fallen to make sure that they know that their loved ones did not die in vain, that they were not forgotten. And what's interesting, though, that I've found is that we don't see as many guys like you walking as much because of that emotional cleansing. And that's a good thing, that so much of that pain has been able to be absorbed by others, because it doesn't go away. I mean, let's face it, that kind of pain just never really goes away. But, you know, when you talk about all this, I think of the Wolfers. And, and it's going to be a really good lead in for you to tell the story about the Wolfers, because their pain never really went away. Their pain is there. It will always be there, but we've all been able to help absorb it with them. Tell us the story about the Wolfers, because it's just one of our favorites.
It is a great story. It is. And, you know, originally when, you know, Carrie Lowe kind of approached me about it, I was really kind of shy about it. I didn't know if we wanted to highlight that, but I am so glad we did. I am so glad we were to highlight their family. So the Wolfer family, I was deployed with an individual by the name of Major Stuart Wolfer. He was assigned to my unit while I was there. He had come a little bit later. We kind of overlapped deployments, and he served in my area. And he, along with Colonel Stephen Scott, they died in an indirect fire attack while we were there. And so those were the names that I carried in my pack, and there's the pack right there, basically, is what it is. So what we did is when I was getting ready to carry the load, and everyone had the signs that said who they're walking for, I had name tapes made of the individuals. And the sad thing about it is I started off with 4, and then a couple years later, I had to add a 5th one on there. And these are people that I knew or that I served with. So someone took a picture of my backpack, because I was there in full battle rattle. And you had mentioned before, Todd, when we talk about carry the load, like, I have to wear 80 pounds of gear to come out and walk. I'm like, no, you don't have to. That's just what I do, because it was the uniform that my friends died in. And I kind of wanted to pay respect to that. But I tend to draw a lot of attention. Even though I'm in camouflage, I try to blend in. You can't really blend in that environment. So someone came up and took a picture of this backpack. And when they posted it, it had the names on there. And Esther Wolfer goes to the bank at Chase Bank and sees this backpack on there with names that she definitely recognized. Wolfer, not a common name, but Wolfer and Scott. And she knew that Colonel Scott died in the same indirect artillery attack. Man, the connection there is just like, she hunted us down. She got Chase to hunt down and find out who it was. And, Carrie the Load was able to connect us. And it was an amazing event. In fact, Jack Pylan made a movie out of it, actually, to kind of document that. I got to meet Beverly, who is Stuart's sister, and their family, and we've been in touch with them ever since. And we talk all the time. And it's like, it's like we've known them forever. And the connection, unfortunately, it's a bad way to. If we had another way, we'd be connected in a different way, not for the death of their son or brother, but we are connected that way, and Carry the Load helped make that connection.
It really is. It's an unbelievable story, and I'm so glad that you were able to share it with us, through the video connection. I'm so glad that the Wolfers were able to come out that one year and be a part of things. Alissa, is there a specific story that may stand out from your time in service? Not necessarily like what happened with Glen and Carry the Load. Anything that stands out that you just recall as a great lesson from your days in service?
I was really, really shy before I went into the military, and I had to learn to come out of that so that I could do my job. And that first platoon sergeant that I talked about, he taught me a lot about being a professional, about not coming to work with your personal issues, about taking care of soldiers. So I think I just learned a lot. I think it was a lot of things that I don't think I would have learned anywhere else. And I don't think the kind of things that we did in the military weren't things that I would have done anywhere else in life. And I think the perspective that having deployed, and I think having worked as hard as we did, kind of shapes the way I see everything else. And
so I can see that. I can see where the perspective shapes things differently. And what about that? Does it shape how you approach things as a family? I mean, obviously, what we've got coming up is Veterans Day, and you guys have a unique perspective on that. So how does how does your time in service as veterans shape that day, not with each other necessarily, but outwardly? I mean, again, you guys have had several generations, to serve this country. I mean, is it meh, not a big deal, or is it a big deal?
I want to make sure our kids understand the sacrifices, and that I think it's a special job. And I want them to recognize that. And whether or not they ever serve themselves, I want them to appreciate what people who serve do. So we do honor that day. We usually go to the parade in Dallas because it's a very visible thing that the kids can see and be a part of. We're not in it, we watch it. So, when I say be a part of, I mean watch the parade. So,
I've heard you say something in regard to, that the focus of your time in the military, it was not on the idea of fighting. It was on the idea of serving. And, and I think that's a really important distinction for people to be able to make, is that you show me someone that wants to get shot at, and I'll show you someone that's got a screw loose. But
and that's what you told us when I signed up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, serving others, it just, your family history, both of you, is just full of it. So, what does that mean to you to this day? I mean, you're not serving in uniform anymore, but why do you continue to serve through things like the organizations like Carry the Load? Why is that important to you?
For me, the organizations that Carry the Load work with, how they help people means a lot to me. When my dad struggled, I said he struggled when he came home from Vietnam because the stuff he had to do was really hands-on. The stuff he saw was really horrible stuff. And he struggled with it. And at that time, we all know how veterans were treated. The VA couldn't help him. There was no counselors. I met friends of his from his groups, and there really was just no help. And he struggled his whole life with it. And so I'm gonna tear up. But when I see what the organizations do for people like my dad, it just means everything to me, because I know that it's a huge cost. So, sorry.
No apology necessary. Is your father still with us?
He passed 12 years ago. So when actually one of the first Carry the Loads, Clint Bruce did a thank you and welcome home to the Vietnam veterans. And my dad had already passed. And I just remember thinking, hey, Dad, listen, it matters. People care. And it just it means a lot to me what Carry the Load does.
People do care. And it goes back to what we were saying. People don't always know how to care, and we have to be reminded of things in order to care. And again, I mean, not to toot the horn of our organization, but I know that that's one of the things that we've done very well. It's one of the things I'm very proud of this organization about is teaching people the importance of caring and understanding and educating. Was your father able to overcome those demons down the stretch?
No, he used to joke. He used to say, I wake up every day and fight to be sane. And we knew how hard that fight was. So he kind of went up and down over time. I think it's something you have good days and bad days and good years and rough years. So.
Well, and now we know he's in a better place, at least. I mean, we can take solace in that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
So Glenn, you, I don't know if you're aware of this, but right around the corner, as a matter of fact, it's the day before Veterans Day. There's this, it's kind of a special day to some people. It's called the Marine Corps birthday. It's 10 November. 1775 was the date of birth. I want to challenge you right now, soldier. What was the Army birthday?
My birthday's on Flag Day.
On Flag Day. Very nice. What year?
1776.
Okay. And could you say that it was founded in a tavern, Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, by Captain Samuel Nicholas? I have to say that's one of the big distinctions between the Marine Corps and the Army. But you did attend a school that has more folklore than any other military institution, that being West Point. I want to hear about your experience at West Point, because that I will tell you this, in all seriousness, that is one of the prettiest places I have ever been.
You know, it is beautiful, and I never really appreciated the beauty until I left the place, because you don't get as much time appreciating the beauty there. So I often joke all the time, it's a great place to be from, not a great place to be, but it was definitely a crucible. I mean, in all aspects, physically and, in a valley, it's a crucible. And, they tell you up front, our job is to pump out leaders, and, whatever vision of glory, and you talked about that too, people who want to go to war, people who glorify combat and stuff like that, we needed to weed those people out, because that's not the reason that, the military exists. Yes, our mission is to go fight our nation's wars, and that is what we have to do, and they train us to do that. But they don't want those individuals there who are going to go glorify, to go, earn a medal someplace to do something. So I had some great leaders there, and that's one thing. When Alissa went to ROTC to get her commission, and we often compare how our training was done, and she's always like, wow, you did that? And I was like, yeah, we did this. I was taught infantry tactics by ranger instructors, and they didn't have that. These were actually our eyes that came off the trail to come give us infantry instruction. We went to Fort Knox and actually drove tanks, and we're surrounded by NCOs who are constantly, putting us in check, basically letting us know, yeah, you think you're hot crap right now, but, check yourself. You are a leader, and you need to understand that you are a servant leader. You serve those soldiers. They don't work for you. You work for them. You're there for their well-being, for everything about them. And it's tough, because even in my civilian job now, I still try to treat my people like my soldiers. And I have to back up a little bit when they say, hey, I'm going on vacation this week. I ask them, where are you going? You got a safety plan? Who's your emergency point of contact? So they often kind of laugh at where that all comes from. Like,
easy, boss.
Exactly. So, the West Point experience was definitely something that, I was very fortunate to get into and be involved in. And I look back on it fondly with some good stories and some good lessons. And I hope to go take the kids back there sometime, maybe catch a football game. So.
Well, you went there with Carry the Load, if I'm not mistaken. You went to the cemetery.
Yes. East Coast Relay kicks off there, and I gave Clint and Stephen, I was like, well, I can't start out at the Naval Academy? No, come on now. So but definitely starting off there at the cemetery.
I don't know if they taught you this in the Army, but geographically, you have to start a little higher to the north, which is it's a simple thing. So.
Well, they didn't write it in crayon, Todd, so I don't know if you'd understand that. That was really important for me to be.
If there weren't pictures, if there weren't pictures, I would have struggled. So.
No, but it was really good to leave off there, and I thought that it was important because one of the people I carry in my backpack, Jamie Leonard, she was the highest-ranking woman to die in combat in Afghanistan, and she died in 2013 after I'd already started walking with Carry the Load. And to go there and basically kick it off from her gravesite, actually, and the cemetery is every cemetery is a very solemn place. This is a reminder. Alyssa's father is buried at Arlington. Starting off the march at the cemetery there, it just kind of puts things in perspective. What are we doing this for? Why are we going to punish ourselves to walk 24 hours down to ground zero from here? And there's a reason for that, and it's hard to explain to the common person, because they say, hey, you walk for 60 miles down through New York to ground zero. Why would you do that? And it's hard to explain the why. But if you were to stand there in that cemetery cemetery and see all those gravestones and understand why they were there and what brought them there, you would do it too. I think you would.
Yeah, it's when you stop and think about something as simple as these people died because we matter, and they didn't even know us, but yet we mattered enough that they would give their last breath for all of us. I think walking 60 miles and losing some toenails is pretty minimal in comparison.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you both a question. I'll let y'all decide who's going to answer first. If you can put into one word your time and service to this country in the military, how would you summarize that time and service in one word?
One word.
Impactful for me.
Humbling for me.
I don't even want to try and expound on that because I think that's just perfect the way it is. You guys, it's been an absolute honor. It's been an absolute pleasure. Love seeing you out there every year, Glenn. I mean, it's pretty easy to know. You know, you're looking around. Where's Glenn? Oh, there's Glenn. He's all to the nines in his camouflage. He's got his pack on full of stuff.
Yeah.
Battle rattle. And you know, Alissa, we've really appreciated having you as an ambassador as well. So thank you all very much for for being here. Thank you all for being a part of this. Really, it's people like y'all that make being a part of Carry the Load so special. So thank you all very much for being here, and we'll talk to everybody again real soon.
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care.